All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Council Chambers. We're here this evening for the November 3rd Subdivision Development Appeal Board hearing. It is 6 o'clock, and I will go ahead and call our meeting to order this evening. A few housekeeping things before we get under the way. So we do have a muster point across the street at the Potters Guild. The bathrooms are located out the door and to the right down the hallway. If we do need to exit, you can exit out council chambers doors and to the left, outside to the front. And then a reminder as well to please silence your phones. For anybody speaking this evening, including those on the board, please, the microphones aren't the best. Speak very clearly and directly into the microphone. That will help everybody hear you very well. And same for those who are speaking at the table at the front. There's 2 microphones there. You may need to adjust them. Please make sure you're speaking directly and clearly into those microphones when you have that opportunity. With that, I'll introduce myself quickly. My name is Justin Laurie. I'm Councillor and current Deputy Mayor for the town of Stony Plain, and I am the Chair of the Subdivision Development and Appeal Board. And then we will start with our board introductions, and I will start down to my far right.
Donna Hayward.
I'm Nico Weingarten.
And Tim Mons.
Excellent. Thank you very much for those introductions. And then we will also ask our administration to introduce themselves, and I will start to the right.
Christina Michaud, SDAB clerk.
Kathy Kazera, Development Officer.
Okay. And then in the back, we have Carrie Notoff. Yes. I'm sorry, we won't be taking our masks off this evening. Okay. So we have proceeded with our administration introductions. So are there any objections to the agenda package this evening? The agenda was available, I believe, as you came in and was also posted online. Excellent. I see no objections to that. Administration, are there any additions, deletions, or changes to our agenda this evening?
No, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Is there anyone present who would like to request a postponement of the hearing for any reason? Seeing none, thank you very much. From members of the appeal board, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Ms. Haywood?
Sorry, motion to adopt the minute.
Excellent. So that motion is on. And from there, I will ask those who are voting, just raise your hand for the vote. So I will call to question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Presented in the package this evening are the minutes from the previous meeting of the Subdivision Development and Appeal Board from January 27th, 2022. They have been reviewed by administration, and I am looking for a motion from the board to adopt the minutes from the previous hearing. Can I have somebody make that motion, please? Mr. Weingarten.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we adopt the minutes of the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board hearing of January 27th, 2022 as presented.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that motion. Oh, look, are there any questions, comments on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll call that to question. All those in favor? Thank you, and that is carried unanimously. So at this time, I will outline the hearing process for everybody in the gallery. So the Subdivision Development and Appeal Board, the hearings are quasi-judicial hearing and will be conducted accordingly. The hearing is being recorded, and anything that is said during the hearing will become part of the minutes and the permanent record. The board will hear from the Development Authority and/or administration first. And following that, the board will hear evidence from those affected by the appeal in the following order. First will be the appellant, or those opposed to the variance. Second will be those in favor of the appellant, also opposed to the variance. We'll hear from the applicant in favor of the variance. We'll hear from those in favor of the applicant, which are in favor of the variance. And then we will hear from the applicant and the appellant providing closing statements if they so wish before the hearing is adjourned. In between each speaker, the board will take the opportunity to ask questions of the speaker if so desired. We ask that you please keep your presentation to a maximum of 5 minutes and speak clearly into the microphones. Please ensure comments to all members of the board are directed through the chair. And if your concerns have already been voiced by someone else, please limit your presentation to new evidence only. If you have any pictures or notes, please ensure you provide a copy of those to the SDAB clerk for the record. And I'd also like to advise the Subdivision Development Appeal Board may uphold the decision of the Development Authority denying the appeal. We may refuse the development permit or uphold the appeal. And we may also add conditions to the development permit if we so see fit. With all of those instructions given, does anyone have any concerns with the process as outlined? Seeing none, I will now ask the Subdivision Development and Appeal Board clerk to announce the appeal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Announcing the appeal for a relaxation of required visitor parking for development permit number 2022-D0117, location 4806 52 Avenue, Plan 4180R, Block 9, Lot 4. Proposed use, relaxation of required visitor parking. Relaxation to the required visitor parking in a multi-unit dwelling, reducing it from 1 stall to 0 on-site visitor parking stalls.
Excellent, thank you very much. So, and this question is to the appellant, to the applicant, and to the audience. Does anyone object to any of the present board members, the SDAB clerk, or the recording secretary hearing this appeal? Seeing none, thank you very much. To the board members, have any board members been in contact with anyone affected by this appeal, visited the site in question, or feel they should be excused from this hearing for any reason such as conflict of interest or pecuniary interest? No, thank you very much. So at this point in time, I will call upon our Development Authority to please proceed with the presentation.
Thank you. I will just summarize the report that was part of the agenda package. The town of Stony Plain had received an application for a 5-unit residential building at 4806 52nd Avenue from Nostos Restorations. It was classified, or it was considered multi-unit dwelling, and it is a permitted use within the land use bylaw C3 Central Mixed Use District. The proposed development meets all of the regulations of the land use bylaw in regards to site coverage, setbacks, building height, parking, landscaping, with the exception of the provision of 1 visitor parking stall. The development permit was conditionally approved with a variance to the visitor parking regulations on September 15th, 2022. Upon review of the development permit application, the Development Authority found that the proposed development is a medium density infill development within the C3 district. The proposed development meets the intent of the Municipal Development Plan and the Old Town Community Plan, which promotes densification of residential uses in the subject area. Multi-unit dwelling is a permitted use within the C3 district. The proposed development meets the regulations of the C3 district. The proposed development provides on-site waste facilities, landscaping, access, drive aisle in accordance with the land use bylaw. The development meets the minimum parking requirements of 1 parking stall per dwelling unit within the C3 district for residential uses. The land use bylaw requires 1 visitor parking stall per 10 dwelling units in a multi-unit residential development. As such, 0.5 visitor spaces are required when you do the calculation. In this case, we're required to round up to 1. The site plan did not provide for a visitor parking stall on site. The Development Authority determined that the variance to the required parking stall was a reasonable deviation from the land use bylaw. The proposed development meets the parking requirements for the number of dwelling units. There is on-street parking available. There are public parking lots available at 4905 52nd Avenue, 4914 51 Avenue, 4905 51st Avenue. And reduced parking within the C3 is supported within the land use bylaw. In conclusion, the Development Authority deemed that the variance to the visitor parking requirements is a reasonable deviation from the regulations. There's plenty of on-street parking available in the area, as well as public parking lots. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. So at this point in time, I will now open the floor for questions from the board to the Development Authority. Do we have any questions? Mr. Weingard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to administration. In your submission, you indicate your last bullet there for your rationale that reduced parking within the C3 district is generally supported within the land use bylaw. I wonder if you could clarify that for me. I see that section 4116 talks about relaxed parking requirements, but my interpretation of that is that it's for businesses only. Does that also apply to residential?
To the chair. Yes, it does apply to residential. I'm just going to find the land use bylaw section for you. So under section 4.1.1 of the general parking regulations, the minimum off-street parking requirements within the C3 district for a residential use is 1 space per dwelling unit. If you go to table 4.1.1A, off-street parking requirements for residential uses, typically, a multi-unit dwelling would require 1 space per dwelling unit containing 1 or fewer bedrooms, or 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit with 2 or more bedrooms.
Thank you.
Question, Mr. Weingarten?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other questions? I do have one through to administration. You mentioned it is a 5-unit building. Are you aware, or do we need to ask the applicant on his turn, how many bedrooms per unit?
I can probably answer that for you. I believe the basement units have 1 bedroom each, and the upper units have 2. Is that correct?
That's correct. That would be 8 bedrooms total then in the 5 units. Correct. Thank you. Another question that I have through to our administration. Can you explain a little bit about the C3 central mixed use definition? Can you speak to the various different developments that can occur within C3, please?
Yeah, the C3 district is it's meant to be a mixed use district. So a combination of residential uses, commercial uses, and from low density to high density.
And you mentioned that there are visitor parking lots available within proximity of this property, and I do know that there is a map included in our package. wondering, just looking, there is a little bit of a scale there. Do you happen to have the distance from the subject property to the public parking lots?
No, I did not calculate that out.
Thank you. Just ask that any comments from the gallery be refrained until it's your turn to speak. Thank you. With that, are there any other questions from the board to administration? Seeing none, does administration have anything else to add? Oh, sorry. So, yeah, you'll have the opportunity to speak whether it is in favor of the appellant or of the application itself. And during that time, if you choose to speak at that time, you may ask questions, and at that time we can seek clarity. So does administration have anything to add to the Development Authority's presentation at this time?
No, I do not.
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. So at this time, I would like to call on the appellant to proceed with their presentation. Is the appellant here today to speak?
The appellant is Shannon Hockey.
Thank you. If you'd like to come up to the microphone, you can introduce yourself and then go ahead with your presentation, please.
Hi there. My name is Shannon Hockey. I'm appealing this for the reason that there is already 4 parking spots that is taken away on that street. There's no parking because of the thoroughfare that's gone through, the way they put the lights up at the end of 48th Street on the 5th. And so it's now no parking at the 2 end houses on the end of that street. So that's parking that's been taken away. Also on the opposite side of the street where the thrift store is, there's no parking there as well. So this one parking spot is not just one parking spot. There, I know I'm only supposed to talk about this one spot, but we already said there's 2 bedrooms, 2, 4, 6, 8. There's only 5 parking spots for that, for those people. And we know that there's going to be at least 2 people in each unit. And only 5 parking spots. So where are all the other people going to park? We need to address that. And what I really want to say is just stand by the bylaws that you've already put in place. We did go and measure those from the back alley. They're supposed to be at least 9 feet. There's no way there's going to be 5 cars parked in there. And the easements, 0 lot lines. That's a problem. And infringing, you showed me, Christina, you showed me the plans for this place. And pushing the fence over into the other person's property. And she didn't know about that. So that's another thing. And a fire hazard. When you've got those 0 lot lines, then no easements at all, then that becomes a fire hazard. And we don't really want that in the downtown core. This is Old Stony. People come here because they love the town, how it's set up and the old houses. And if we're gonna ruin this downtown core, if we keep building fiveplexes and duplexes and everything. So us as citizens, we weren't asked about this fiveplex going up because you guys keep changing the bylaws to suit your agenda. And we're just standing up against it. And that's all I've got to say.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask you just to remain there for a moment as the board will have the opportunity to ask you for questions.
Okay.
Just wait. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Ms. Hockey, for your presentation this evening. Appreciate you bringing this forward and expressing your concerns to us. So at this point in time, I will ask the board if you have any questions for Ms. Hockey. You do not? Okay. So I do have a question through to administration. You mentioned 0 lot lines. Now, I don't believe this is a 0 lot line development, as I believe any 0 lot line developments would have to come back to the town council for approval prior to a development permit being issued. So I'm just going to ask administration, is this a 0 lot line development?
Yes.
No, Mr. Chair, it's not a 0 lot line development. It met all the setbacks of the district regulations.
Thank you very much for clarity on that. Any other questions? Seeing no questions, thank you very much, Mr. Huck, for your presentation. So at this point in time, I would like to call on anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the appeal. So in support of the appeal. If you'd like, come up and again, clearly state your name into the microphone for our recording secretary, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen,
Can I have
administration.
turn them? Yeah, you can turn the microphone. They're very easy. If you can just turn it
Thank you.
towards yourself, that'd be great. Thank you.
Administration clerk, appeal board, and chairman of the board, and guests in the auditorium. My name is Jane Cromie. I live on the block of 52nd Ave and 53rd Ave behind the development. I am in opposition of the appeal. Unfortunately, I wrote a letter and some of it overlaps. I'm wondering if I could have permission just to read my document.
Certainly. Yes, go ahead.
I'm a little nervous.
It's okay.
This is so formal. I also have documents, pictures, exhibit 1 to 10, as well as other documents sent from other residents that couldn't make it tonight. So can I just?
Yes, if you can pass those to the clerk,
Okay,
and the clerk will make sure that copies of those get distributed as we discuss this later on this evening.
Thank you. Do my best here, so bear with me. The town of Stony Plain is responsible for upholding bylaws that have legally been implemented pertaining to the protection and development of future developments in our city, including the safety and well-being of our residents. It is the town's responsibility to ensure that parking requirements actually adhere to the development expansion. A variance in relaxing the land use bylaw by reducing the required visitor parking stall to 0 in said case is not supported by me nor residents of 52nd or 53rd Avenue. The lack of designated parking stalls continue to be an issue as related to further expansion and development in our downtown core. This is currently creating enormous issues at the present time. This sector already has limited access to street parking for residents and businesses, which have not been publicly addressed. I highlight publicly addressed. It's been addressed with the council. Residents of the downtown core need to be advised of this attention and the transparency in regards to parking. The current issues that are not being addressed, which cause stress not only on the block, but in the alleyway. The reason for my appeal is that the relaxation of the bylaws implemented by the town of Stony Plain contradicts the one stall visitor parking. This is required for a reason. There are guidelines for community development, And it's disappointing to know that this is being questioned. And it has a huge implications currently for our parking already as a resident. There is already limited parking as stated, and it's also in my pictures to the new light intersection on the 5th. The 2 resident properties on the right of the block have 0 parking, and there's parking signs that indicate that. As well, because of the access way to turning right. So that's exhibit 1, 2, and 3. Therefore, this puts an added increase into traffic flow on the street and again into the back alley. The thrift store and the yoga studio also have no parking available currently to their patrons. As it was it's an example in the pictures today. It's also unknown if the visitor parking will affect or impact that situation as well, especially during the day. There's an exhibit 4 and number 5. As to the shown evidence, there is no extra parking. I'm not sure where the visitor parking is, but I do know from volunteering at the thrift store that there is an issue with customer parking daily. There is a public parking beside the thrift store in that alley, but it only holds 3. It only has 3 spots, and sometimes it's filled by staff. The Meridian also down the 5th has caused extreme variance to the flow of traffic coming down 53rd Avenue. Again, just again, traffic flow and the amount of cars that are on the road. Having a visitor parking spot will alleviate some of that concentration. No plans of the said development have been published for residents regarding how the parking will be developed for said visitor parking or 5-plex parking residents. The residents need to be aware of the actual plan and how the multiplex plans to deal with 5 extra residents and the visitor parking. We weren't made aware of that, unfortunately, so this may have been able to be alleviated if we could have talked it out as a community. Many of the long-term residents, I've been a resident in the Umbach house for 15 years. When the bylaws were implemented and I purchased my property, it was stated as transitional. So if I want to do a commercial endeavor, again, relaxing the bylaws for everybody could lead to, again, just extreme parking, and the residents won't be able to park in front of their own house. I hope the town will consider our position and not bend their laws for one individual versus many others who are concerned in this regard. I appreciate your time and your consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Crump. I'll just ask you to remain there for a second. We'll see if there are any questions from the board members for you. Are there any questions? So
I will ensure that the exhibits are photocopied and distributed for your review prior to your decision. Thank you.
excellent. Thank you. Mr. Weingart, we do have one question, sir.
One question for
sorry.
clarification. When you sat down, you said you were in opposition to the appeal. I'm
Right.
assuming you mean you're in opposition to the applicant.
To
You're
the
in
applicant,
favor
I'm
of
sorry,
the
yeah.
appeal.
Yeah,
Is that correct? You're in favor of the appeal?
Yeah.
Thank you.
sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Crump. Thank you very much. So again, we'll call on anyone in favor of the appeal And again, we'll just ask that we limit our comments to new evidence if possible, please. Welcome. If I can have you introduce yourself, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maureen Hollins. I own the property right next to the proposed fiveplex, 4808 52nd Avenue. And I'm not real happy, to say the least. First of all, I was not given notice. I heard from hearsay, gossip, whatever you want to call it, that I was getting a fiveplex built next door to my rental property. I would think I should get a letter informing me of that. Then I heard again, only by hearsay, that my fence had to be removed. I don't know why. I heard it was a zero, whatever it is, to your property line. But I thought there was a bylaw stating that there had to be so much room between the property line. My fence is right on the property line. Because of this beautiful fiveplex, whatever it is, going up, I lost my renter of 12 years. And now I'm trying to sell my place. And of course, I think it's going to be a hindrance for the sale of my property. So I don't think there's enough room for parking of visitors around that area either. I have plenty of parking on my property for my renters, but I don't see how, especially with this visitor parking thing, there's going to be enough parking room for everybody. And I don't know why the fellow who's building doesn't just buy my property and put his parking there.
Is that all you have this evening?
And that's it.
Thank you. So again, I will open it up to the board for questions, please. Seeing none. Go ahead, Nico. Yeah. Mr. Weingarten.
The fence is is on your property?
The fence is on the property line. It's my fence.
Okay, because the information that's provided here indicates that the fence is going to be reduced in height. So I'm assuming that
It has to be reduced in height. My understanding is up to the back of my house. Because it is, I can't remember how, but it is high.
Thank you. I was wondering if we can get some clarity from that from administration. Do we have that clarity available this evening?
Yes. The maximum height of a rear yard fence is 1.8 meters or 6 feet. And the existing fence is 1.9. The fence was shown on the site plan as 1.9, and during my review, I required it to be reduced to 1.8 to meet the regulations. I was not aware of who owned the fence.
Thank you. So for clarity, the fence itself is not required to be moved. The fence is simply required to comply with the height and the regulations.
Correct.
And that fence is currently existing?
Yes.
And there were no permits required to be pulled to build that fence initially, correct?
Not if it meets the regulations.
Excellent, thank you.
Did I
Any
hear
other
you right?
questions?
Brian didn't pull any permits? You don't know?
Typically to construct a fence that is compliant with the legislation in place would not require a permit. A fence does not typically require a permit. So I believe what we're hearing is that on the review, it was uncertain by the development authority whether that fence was within your property or within the property in question. So it was flagged based on the review as non-compliant. And I'm assuming at that point in time, then a request for compliance was issued.
Yes.
Okay, my understanding when I purchased the house was the fence was mine.
Yeah, and it may be, again, without a real property report and a survey, I'm assuming we wouldn't be able to know that at this exact moment in time. However, I think what we're hearing from the development authority is regardless as to which property that fence exists on, it is not compliant with the legislation of the 1.8 meter maximum. And so it was flagged because the property was being reviewed. And so it was included in, I would guess, the development permit, in case it did exist on the property in question that the development permit was being issued for. Would that be correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, when I review a site plan that's submitted with an application, I'm assuming that the improvements on the site plan belong to the property I'm reviewing, so that's why I required it to be reduced while they were doing the demolition of the existing structures and the construction of the new building. I asked that they also bring that fence into compliance.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And so has any order been issued then to Ms. Hollins and the property of 4808 52nd Avenue to bring that fence into compliance?
No.
Thank you very much for that clarity. Any other questions at this time?
So I want something clarified.
Yeah, sure.
I do not have to lower that fence?
I would look to the Development Authority for that one.
We'll talk later, Maureen.
Okay, good enough. Good enough.
I believe what I'm hearing is at this point in time, no order has been issued to you at this point in
Yeah,
time.
no, I haven't heard
In
anything.
regards to that fence, so I would suggest that that would be a
Like-
future potential conversation.
Like I said, anything I know about this, I've heard through gossip and just, I don't know, gossip, basically.
So, and actually that'll lead me to another question of clarity through administration. So in regards to variances, et cetera, there are required letters that are to be sent out. Can you just explain to the gallery and to the board members what letters were sent out, who they were sent out to?
Absolutely. So the Municipal Government Act requires us to circulate to within a 30-meter radius of the subject property in the case of discretionary uses or variance. So a letter was sent out to the properties within that 30-meter radius for the variance approval. And I did just check the circulation list, and Maureen Hollins is on the list, so she may want to just verify her mailing address with the town to ensure that the mail is going to the correct mailing address.
Will I get all my bills?
We do what's required under the Municipal Government Act.
When was
And
that
we met
sent?
that legislation.
When was that letter sent out?
We can have that answered.
September 15th, 2022 is the date of the letter. It would have went out that day or the following day
2022,
this year.
September 15th.
September? No, I never received that. I received one here in November, I believe. Was there one sent out in November? Oh,
The
you can't
chair,
talk to me?
that probably would have been the notice of the hearing, and it would have went out in October.
Late October.
Yeah, see, I didn't receive the first one. So then I didn't know anything. I was like a mushroom.
And administration, in addition to the letters, were there any publications made in newsprint, on digital media, et cetera?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it would have went on the town's website.
Town's website?
Town's website is not something I check regularly.
Thank you, Ms. I'm just making sure that there's compliance with legislation that there is out there so that it was in all the required places. I'm just making sure that the information was out there and available appropriately to the residents.
Okay.
Excellent. Any other questions for Ms. Hollins? None. Thank you very much for coming to this evening and providing us with your information and the concerns you have in regards to the variance that's been issued.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Excellent. Okay. So we are still on those in favor of the appeal. Is there anyone else in the gallery this evening who would like to speak in favor of the appeal? I'll just check one more time. Yep, okay. Again, I'll just ask that when you're seated, you clearly introduce yourself in the microphones.
My name is Alan Bordello. I'm a resident just 3 doors down from the proposal. Again, I do not believe that there should be a relaxation of the parking bylaw requiring the visitor parking lot. Again, and I said, you folks don't want to hear repetition, but the changes of the Meridian Road 48th has dynamically changed the traffic patterns that are existing on 52nd Avenue. You've got both 53rd and I'll say 51. You can no longer make left-hand turns and head north. So basically everybody is being routed to 52nd. The traffic flow in our back alley has almost gone up 30% more, and they're non-residents. They're people that are approaching from James Street, getting to the end, wanting to go left, and they can't. So they end up taking a route because the access of our alleyway is now on that road. And they're basically coming around through our back alleyways to get over to 52nd. So additional parking is going to be a major problem. As stated, the loss of parking right in front of 48th because of the new intersection, both at the thrift store and the 2 residences on the end. The nearest public parking is over a block away. It is located between 49th and 50th, right beside the duplex that's developed there. And I did have a question, which is probably the appropriate time now for the developing officer.
So you can address that question through me.
Oh, sorry. What is defined as multi-dwelling?
Okay. If you can continue, we'll have that answered.
Okay. And is it in that C3 description, is there a desired multi-development instead of just saying, okay, we're going to have more than one? Historically, also, it's taken place on 52nd Avenue about 5 years ago. Infill was done just across the street from us. And they originally asked for a relaxation of parking. And again, the neighborhood said, what's going on? It was, I think, originally a plan for a 4-unit development. Again, lack of parking. And your board, I know we went through hearings as well again. A developer converted his construction to a duplex, top and bottom. It alleviated it reduced the number of bedrooms, and thus they have their parking. The residents of that building upstairs always park on the street. The basement parks in the back. So this is a point of history that has already taken place. My question to the board, which I know you're an appeals board, but again, this multi-development. I appreciate the apartments. That's even just kitty corner to our town hall and over on the other side. But if you're expecting to have multi-family dwellings on a single town lot, then I think in the long term, we're just going to see over congestion and, well, an erosion of tax base. These buildings will not be respected. They'll be abused, and we're going to see our downtown core turn into a slum. We need proper development. We need long-term thinking. And if you folks have it, I have no problem seeing such an apartment building built right on our street. But this building at present, with a relaxation of parking, is going to stand for the next 40 to 50 years in the center of our block, rendering any multi-lot construction nearly impossible. So this decision can go on and last for another 50 years and affect the development of all other neighboring properties. That's my end.
Thank you, Mr. Bordello. Just have you remain for a second so that we can have any questions, and then we can have your question answered. So I think first and foremost, we'll get your question answered. So to our administration. So the question is, what is a multi-unit development, and is there a desired multi-unit development? Is that correct? So are you able to address that?
To the chair, I understood that he wanted a definition of multi-unit dwelling. Is that correct?
Yes. Being a duplex, fourplex,
Okay.
sixplex.
So under the land use bylaw, multi-unit dwelling is defined as a dwelling in either a residential building containing 3 or more dwelling units or a building containing both residential and non-residential uses that may have a common entrance from the ground level, which is not a row house dwelling. So any more than 3 units or 3 or more units.
And not a row house.
Yeah, so that would be any more than 3 units, and again, must have, I believe it's either central access or independent access, correct?
Correct.
And then in respect to your question for preferential multi-unit, again, I believe that goes to the varying densities. And as was mentioned, the C3 district does allow for all of the densities that exist within the land use bylaws of the town of Stony Plain. So everything from the highest density, which I don't have the exact number of units off the top of my head, all the way down to a single family dwelling on those individual lots.
Yes, just like the apartment built above the new library.
Yeah.
Beautiful building. Compliment to our neighborhood.
So any other questions for Mr. Bordello? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. So again, I will call upon those in favor of the appeal and anyone else who is in favor of the appeal. One more opportunity. Anyone else in favor of the appeal that would like to speak this evening? Thank you very much. Thank you to all those who spoke. So I'll now call upon the applicant to proceed with their presentation. Is the applicant present in chambers this evening? Excellent. Please come forward, introduce yourself, and then you can begin your presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Byron Moser. I'm the owner of Nostis Restorations. We're the permit applicant for the development and the building permit. This is a family project. Sorry, I'm nervous. This is my first time being here in council chambers. Our vision for this property is to build attractive, comfortable, and affordable residences that anybody would be proud to come home to. And particularly in this location, it's one of the most walkable residential areas in Stony Plain. The Old Town core offers some of the most attractive amenities and a huge selection of shopping and business, banking, churches, all kinds of things for residences in that area. And our hope is just to increase some access to that. And our goal is to, just continue to revitalize that area with homes that are efficient and will be an asset to the area. And I know rental developments do tend to have a bit of a reputation. Our goal is to set a very different example with this building. And that's about all I have to say. I'm not sure if that's helpful or not, but thank you.
Thank you very much. So again, I'll just ask you to remain there so we have questions. So I'll look to the board. Do we have any questions? David, go ahead.
When you put together your package to the towns that build this building, did you take into account like any traffic studies or anything like that, just so that you would have some of these issues that you're like having to deal with now?
Not really. We looked at the parking requirements, the 1 unit per, or one stall per unit. Call it lack of experience, maybe. I thought we met that requirement and I kind of left it at that. It's not a really, really large development. So no.
Have other questions?
Another question, so in respect to the parking, having 1 per unit makes complete sense. It's because that is the requirement. What type of residents are you looking to attract? Like if one of your renters doesn't have a vehicle, is there an option to let it be a visitor stall?
Of course, yeah. I'm not sure how it would necessarily work out and function, but we've considered maybe, offering reduced rent for people who, work from home, are able to run their lives without a vehicle and wouldn't occupy one of those stalls.
You just had mentioned it's the most walkable area, so then I just thought, well, maybe you're attracting maybe some type of renters in that don't have vehicles.
Right, yeah.
Thank you.
Questions? I do just have one question for you. When you were made aware of the additional requirement for the 1 visitor parking stall, have you taken the opportunity to look at your proposed plan and determine if you could place that stall on the lot in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, we've tried, again, we meet all the setback requirements on all sides. The parking lot fits 5 units, as well as waste disposal area. And we have, a deck area out on each side for each unit. We would have to give up, I'm not sure we can actually fit a 6th stall on the lot without moving the house closer to the street, which would encroach on the front setback requirement.
So like I said, in order to fit that stall on the property line, you would then require a different variance at that
Correct.
point in time. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your presentation this evening.
Thank you.
So at this point in time, then, I would like to call forward those in favor of the applicant. So if you would like to speak in favor of the applicant and the variance that was issued. Is there anyone in chambers who wishes to speak in favor of it? Please come forward. And if I can have you just clearly introduce yourself, then you can go ahead with your presentation.
Hi, my name is Lyle Mosier and I'm owner of the property and that is being considered tonight. And, appreciate the opportunity and the freedom that we have to deal with these things in this kind of a manner, a nice organized manner. I don't have a lot to add to what has been said by the development board mostly and the construction folks there. But just a couple other things. We have noted, I did note, and I recognize the lack of parking in front of the 2 lots that go toward the main street there and so on. But in our observations since we've been working on this, we did note that the spaces in front of the property that we have, 4806, there's never been anybody parked there during that time. Now, I mean, I'm not there all the time, but I did make a point of trying to observe that from time to time and felt that those street stalls would be available most of the time to the property. So that was part of the consideration as well. And then, definitely just reiterating, the objective was to look for the opportunity for some folks who would be able to rent there and maybe didn't have transportation, giving that more affordable housing in the downtown. So that's part of the objective there. That's
Thank you. We'll just look for any questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. Is there anyone else in chambers who would like to speak in favor of the applicant? One last call. Anyone else in chambers who'd like to speak in favor of the applicant? No more. Thank you very much, those who spoke. So at this point in time, I would like to ask the applicant if you have any closing comments that you would like to make on this evening. Okay. And to the appellant, do you have any closing comments that you would like to make this evening? No? Thank you. So to both the applicant and the appellant, do you feel that you have received a fair hearing this evening? So again, in regards to this evening, do you feel that you have had a fair hearing this evening? Yes? So in accordance with provincial legislation, the board is required to hand down a decision within 15 days from the date of today's hearing. No decision is binding on the board until it issues a written decision. At this point in time, I'd like to thank you for your attendance this evening. I'd like to thank all of those who spoke and those who submitted written submissions. Again, the board will take the opportunity to review all of the information. We will also take the opportunity to review the exhibits that we have received. So thank you very much for providing those. A copy of those will be provided to all the board members as we make a consideration of our decision. With that, I will close the public portion of this hearing and I will excuse the gallery this evening. Again, thank you very much for your attendance.